everyone, and welcome to Early Childhood Curriculum. I'm sorry about the lateness of the video. I've been trying to figure out this whole thing out, and so kind of the best situation for right now is just putting it on YouTube, but hopefully I can get like Screencast-O-Matic or Loom or something that just works a little bit better than this, so I apologize, but hopefully you can maybe put like the video, and then I'm just putting a PDF of the PowerPoints because a lot of people don't have like access to PowerPoint, won't be able to open it, that kind of thing, and so this way everybody has access to the information in case they missed the course or just needed a review of some of the stuff that we talked about in the face-to-face session. So on the second page of the PowerPoint, you'll just see my information. Everybody's had my cell phone. It's been on the syllabus, so that's probably the best way to contact me. Send a text, give me a phone call, leave a message if I don't respond, and let me know which class you're in and your name so that I can get back to you as quickly as possible. Email is fine too. It just sometimes it might take a little bit longer, especially like on the weekend or something, for email. Let's see. As far as my office hours go, I'm typically in here during those times, but I'm also a university field supervisor for clinical teachers, so I'm out in the field with them, and sometimes I'm out for meetings and things like that. So if you ever want to come see me, always make an appointment so that I can make sure that I'm here to meet with you. And then our book is that Early Childhood Curriculum book. On the next slide, you'll see the major assignments for the course. So we've got, you've already taken one of the exams, and they'll all be in the similar format where during that 2 or 3 day period, it'll initially pop up, and so you'll be able to download the Word document, circle your answer. You can print it off and do it by hand. You can do it through Word, however, whatever's easier for you is fine with me. You just upload the changed template for your exams, and there'll be 3 of those. There's not like a midterm and a final in here, just 3 exams. The book talk paper and presentation. So in this class, it's kind of driven by a thematic unit theme that you'll choose. When we were discussing in some of the face-to-face classes, a lot of people, especially the BAAS students, it's very difficult for them to get together because they're working full-time jobs, have families, all of that. And so what we decided is just kind of let people be in a group if that worked better for them, or if they want to do it solo, that works better as well. That'll be just fine. So you're going to choose your theme, and everything will align along this theme, including your book talk. So you're going to choose a book that goes along with your theme. So for example, if you chose the ocean theme, you might choose a book like Swimmy from Leah Leone, or The Rainbow Fish, something like that that goes along with the ocean theme. And then you are going to use your book and give kind of an explanation of it, how it relates to the unit, how you would use the book in a classroom setting with students, an activity that might accompany it. You'll talk about the author, the illustrator, give a summary. So all of that gets included in your paper and in your presentation. For the presentations, we usually do those like in class, and so but again, that doesn't work well for some people, so for the presentations we'll just do online as well. And then the next item is your prop box presentation and lessons. So as you read through the dramatic play chapter, and then you guys just did an activity where you were looking at like items and like coming up with themes that would go along with it for a dramatic play center. That's what you're doing along with this. So again, you're aligning it with your theme. So if your theme is ocean, you're going to have things in there maybe where students could dress up like sea animals, or they could dress up like oceanographers, or they could dress up like people that are going fishing, or people that work in a submarine, something to deal with the ocean, right? But also items that would encourage dramatic play, where kids are dressing up and they have this kind of free imaginative play. But it encourages them to use their vocabulary words that you're talking about, learning with the theme. It gives them this opportunity to use like real life, ish materials where they can make these meaningful connections to the content that you're teaching. And so you're going to create a prop box, and then you will have a lesson plan that goes along with that. And it's not like the typical MSU lesson plan. There's a format that's in D2L, and you just kind of follow it, but you really need to think about what materials would I put in this box. How would I introduce this dramatic play center to students? How would I group students? Would it only be for 2 people? Would it be for 4 kids? How would they be grouped with these materials? And how do these materials encourage dramatic play? And you're going to use support from your text to explain those things. And then with your thematic unit and your class participation are the other parts. So class participation are like turning in those activities and those other assignments throughout the course that you've done as well. And then the thematic unit is the rest. And so what you're going to do is you're going to use your theme, and you're going to create and brainstorm some goals. So these overall broad ideas for what you think is kind of important for the students to know by the end of the unit. And I've got some examples in the PowerPoint as well. And then from there, you're going to use all 10 areas that are listed as chapters in the book. And you'll see those on the rubric for the thematic unit as well. And you're going to come up with 5 ideas for each area. So like 5 ideas for art, 5 ideas for dramatic play that align with your theme and also the pre-kindergarten guidelines. And explain just a little brief explanation of what those are. And then you're going to take one of those and write the big, like long MSU lesson plan format, and that templates in D2L as well. Where you'll say, okay, these are the pre-kindergarten guidelines. These are my objectives. This is what I want them to learn by the end of the lesson. This is my assessment plan. So this is how I would know that they knew the objectives by the end of this lesson. And then here's my materials that I'm going to use in this lesson. And then this is my step-by-step plan of exactly what I would do to introduce this concept to students. And then at the end, you're going to have a plan for a center. So you would say, okay, this is my art lesson that I would be teaching, how to use these particular materials, but it also connects to my thematic unit in this way. And then for the center, this gives the students they would be using these materials, and they would do this activity in the art center later on in the day or throughout the week to reinforce the skills that I taught in my small group lesson, something like that. All right, so if you go to the next slides, it's giving kind of an introduction just into early childhood curriculum. So you guys have read through these chapters already, you just had an exam on them, so hopefully you know the material fairly well, but this will just give a little bit more of an explanation to help you understand it a little bit better. So there's an example of a goal and an objective. So goals are those broad, overreaching ideas from a farm unit, and then an objective is very specific. It's for a particular lesson. So like an overall goal of teaching a farm unit to students would be for them to be able to explain and analyze the benefits of a farm to society as a whole, right? That's where we get our vegetables, that's where we get our fruits, that's where we get our produce from, our dairy, and just kind of recognize their relationship with the farm. Oh, these things in my house, they came from not just the store, but there was another process before that, and that's people's careers and what they do and their livelihood. And so just to be able to, that's just kind of a big overall broad idea you'd want them to know after teaching about the farm, right? But then if you were teaching a science lesson within that unit, maybe a 4-week long unit, and you're teaching a science lesson. So maybe you're going to do a science lesson about butter. You would want them to be able to connect with the physical changes that are happening, right? So identify the changes made when butter turns to from a liquid to a solid using a sensory experience. That's a very specific thing that you want them to do during that science lesson, but it's not one of the big overall ideas that you want them to know for the unit. On the next page, it just gives an introductory piece to early childhood. So it's really birth through age 8, but in this course we're really focused on preschool because there's not really another class you get for that. In Intro to the Young Child, you get to learn a lot about like 0 to 3, 0 to 4 age, and then all the other education classes really focus on like kindergarten on into 5th, 6th grade, so that you're prepared to teach those as a classroom teacher. But nowhere else do you really get to like just focus on pre-kindergarten, and so that's what our main focus is for this class. The environment is definitely critical and very important. You want it to be friendly, welcoming. A lot of the times this is kids' first experience in a school setting. I taught pre-K and that's my background, so very important to me. Then teachers' knowledge and skills are critical, are crucial. Very important that you have an understanding of how children develop cognitively, physically, socially, and emotionally. You need to understand about language development because everything that we do for young children is kind of centered around developmentally appropriate practice and individual student needs. So teacher knowledge is important. We want to have a very child-centered curriculum. It's not like you sit up there and lecture like you do in junior high and high school and to the college level, right? Everything's engaging, hands-on. It has a rich history, and a lot of the times you've got to be an advocate for your students and for their families. So on the next slide, you'll see the developmental theorists, one for psychosocial, one for sociocultural, one for cognitive development, and one for, and then Howard Gardner, and he kind of goes through his theory of multiple intelligences, which is so important because in early childhood, we really believe in focusing like on the whole child and not just like cognitive development like you would if you were like a high school algebra teacher. You're like, do they know this content? This is important. How can I help them to better understand this? And you're kind of focused on there. But with young children, your teen young children, you have all of these different aspects of themselves that you're looking into, not necessarily just like cognitive development and like content area pieces. So and these developmental theories you'll hear over and over again in Ed Psych, in your methods courses. So just make sure to, and they'll probably be on the PPR exam, so good stuff to know for sure. The next couple slides I think go into developmentally appropriate practice, which is a key piece to early childhood education, and you'll see DAP used as well. That's what the initials are for. So it just means that things are, one, we always think about age appropriateness, right? Like you wouldn't read like a Harry Potter book to like a 2-year-old, right? That wouldn't be developmentally appropriate. They're not going to be able to sit through, you talking about stuff that's probably a little bit over their heads anyways, right? But you also don't want to do things that are too young for them, right? You want things that are stimulating for them. And so it's important to learn and understand about child development and what kids are doing at different stages so that you can make your lessons developmentally appropriate and age appropriate for students. You also want things that are individually appropriate because, as we know, kids are, develop all over the place, right? So some kids learn things very quickly, some they need a little bit more time or to learn it in a different way. I have 3 boys at home and I think about them all the time, and my first son walked on the first day of his 9th month, and he was this little teeny tiny thing just kind of running around after that. And then my middle son didn't walk till he was like 14 months. He was like, nah, I'm not doing this. So they all do things on their own time level. I had pre-K students that could read on a 4th grade level and pre-K students that didn't know how to hold a pencil day 1. So age appropriate, individually appropriate is very important. And then also keeping in mind students' culture and language and making sure they are included in the classroom is also a piece of developmentally appropriate practice. And sometimes that can be, hard, but you really just have to get to know the students and the families that you're serving and the community that you're serving. Just one example, I worked in Richardson ISD for part of my teaching career, and there are high numbers of students whose families practice Islam, and they do not eat the gelatin, stuff like that. So no marshmallows or anything, because it's got like the horse feet hooves in it and stuff, and like, you know, pig's hooves and stuff and marshmallows and stuff, so they can't eat those things. We use that all the time in pre-K, you know, so if you don't, you just have to, like, you know, figure those things out. Or like I had students that were Jehovah's Witnesses that couldn't participate in like any holiday celebrations. They don't pledge allegiance to the flag, those type of things. It's really important to understand and know your students and what's important to them and their families, and make sure that's included in your classroom. On the next slide, you'll see Parton's developmental stages of play. There's a PowerPoint link, or YouTube link. So click on the YouTube link and it'll go through these developmental stages of play, just so you can see some examples of those. And then if you'll go to the next slide, this is really all where chapter 2 is, where it's talking about observation and assessment in early childhood. So we don't assess with like paper pencil tests. Kids aren't like sitting out little pencils like bubbling things in, right? And so we've got to use our observation skills, and use data collection tools that are authentic assessments in the classroom. So there are several examples that the chapter gives: anecdotal records, checklists, reflective logs, diaries, case studies, portfolio assessments. I used a lot of anecdotal records when I was teaching pre-K, where I could take like notes of things that were happening and add it into their portfolio, talk with it about to parents later, go back and look and see, well, were they really understanding this concept or no? Or, oh yes, they got it. I use checklists a lot. You know, do they know their colors? Do they know their numbers? Like, those are good things, like, have checklist things for. I didn't ever have time to like do a reflective log or diary, just to, you know, that's typically not things teachers just have all this extra time to do. And then case studies I would do on like a case-by-case basis if I needed to. Like if I had students that I was like, there's some interesting things going on here, like I may need to like refer them to a specialist, or like get them some extra help or something. So like I would build up a portfolio for that, so I could like show evidence to parents or to our speech therapist or to something, you know, say, hey, like I'm seeing these things, you know, what are my next steps to kind of do about that. And then I always use portfolio assessments. They're great. A lot of teachers nowadays, not when I was teaching, but now put them all online. It's really wonderful, where parents are, and then you're able to see too, like when it's time to do like report cards and things, you can kind of look at and see like, wow, okay, I do see where these skills are developing. Even a lot of teachers now have students choose their best work to put into their portfolios. So great way to do that. My son's teacher, second grade teacher, one of my sons, got 3, uses Seesaw, and so he gets to choose a lot of his own things that go in there, and a lot of it's he'll video things, and so it'll be like his work with his own words, and you can kind of see, oh, they're understanding this, or no, they're really not getting this concept. And I think it's cool that it just automatically sends to parents as well. On this next slide, you'll see just kind of the multi-level process of an early childhood curriculum. They're based on philosophies, which are basic principles, attitudes, beliefs of a program. Then they have goals, you know, those overall general overviews, what children are expected to learn and gain, and then objectives for specific lessons. And then you'll see next the daily schedule. So this is a schedule pieces. This isn't like how the schedule goes, you don't have just arrival, departure. They're just saying, hey, these are all things that you need to have in a daily schedule when working with young children. So you have to plan an arrival time. You can't just have them show up and just do whatever, right? Just like you would in like high school, junior high, you'd have like a bell ringer, right, when they came in. So like when the kids come in, what is it that they're going to be doing like when they get there? So you always have a plan for arrival time. You have to plan for departure time and how you're going to get backpacks and line up and jacket zipped and all of that kind of stuff. In a full day program, you'll have a rest time or a nap time plan for sure, because they're very young and they still get tired throughout the day. maybe about an hour and a half to a 2 hour period of the day. And if it's a half day program, you won't have that, because you'll teach 3 hours, you'll have your lunch and planning time, and then you'll have your second class come in for another 3 hours. And then transitions, you always plan for transitions. So every time you're moving to a new activity, you have a transition for that, so that your classroom management, everything just goes smoothly. You always have routines of things that fit into the schedule, and you want to make sure that now you don't have to do the exact same thing every day, but you want to have the schedule the same, so the activities can change. You always want to keep the children excited about coming to school, and not just, oh, here we go, here's another worksheet, or something like that. But they want to have that security in knowing, okay, so when I get to school, I know that I'm going to put my backpack away, I'm going to eat my breakfast in the classroom if it's like in the morning, and then I'm going to get out my book to read, and then my teacher's going to call us over and we're going to have circle time, and after circle time we're going to go to centers, and after centers we go play outside. They want that routine down. Meals and snacks is something you have to plan, and that looks different in every classroom. So if it's a half-day program, your morning class will get breakfast, your afternoon class will get snack. If it's a full day, you'll have to make plans for breakfast, lunch, snack times. And then also if you work in like a Head Start program, you sit down for like family style meal, you'll do teeth brushing. So all of that, is things that will depend on the type of program that you're in. You'll all have to plan activity times, so you'll have to plan for centers. Those change for the different concepts that you're teaching, the different themes that you're teaching, and so it's like kind of physically demanding too, in a way, in that you're changing the centers, changing labels, all of that. Diapering and toileting, something to always think about. If you're like teaching pre-K, like 4-year-olds, you won't have to worry about doing diapers, but you will have to like explain the process, because like your expectations for hand washing might be very different than what they do at home or what they do in their culture, or your expectations for them using the bathroom might be a little bit different from what it is at home. For example, like kids, like a lot of kids from different cultures, but also like it's more of like a socioeconomic status thing. If you live in an older house, like you don't just flush toilet paper, you throw it away in a wastebasket, and so a lot of kids will just throw it on the floor if there's not a wastebasket in there. So you kind of have to explain to them, oh, it's okay to throw it in the toilet here, or have a wastebasket in there, or whatever it is that you choose to do. And then making sure like that parents understand about how to like appropriately dress kids for school, so that they can have their independence, like in things like going to the bathroom. Like there's cute like glittery belts that little girls, parents love to put on little girls, but like they can't get out of them to go to the bathroom. Or make sure if you're going to put overalls on them that they know how to like unhook them, and all of those things. For older kids, not like if you're teaching like a Head Start 2-year-old class or something, you're going to be doing some potty training and diapering practices. And then outdoor activities as well, you plan for those. The state of Texas actually recommends that you go outside for a pre-K schedule. You can go to TEA and go to the pre-kindergarten guidelines, and at the beginning it gives recommended half-day and full-day pre-kindergarten schedules. So for a half-day program, they recommend going outside at least once, like 20-25 minutes, and then going outside twice for outdoor learning in a full-day program. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see where curriculum development, remember, it's all child-centered. It's all about the child. So you'll see it's developed by themes and units. So we go through different units that are focused on themes, about 4 weeks each-ish. And again, all centered on the child. And that's done through the teacher creating webs. So you're going to create a curriculum web so you can think about all of the content areas and the pieces and how that fits into the thematic unit. And then projects are a big part of teaching now. A lot of school districts really push project-based learning. I'll show you an example of a project that I did in my classroom. And then you create lesson plans from there. So this is a project that I worked on in my classroom, the next few slides, where we were studying about life cycles. And so we got chicken eggs, and we got to see how that whole process worked with something being born. So you'll go through and you can see some of the baby chicks hatching, and after they've hatched, and you've got to take care of them, and they need food and water and warmth and all of these different pieces, so that the kids got to learn about and make observations of and have a better understanding of how all of that works. And then the next several slides are going through what a classroom might look like, and things to take into consideration. So your book talks about the 4 room zones, which I think is really important. You have active, quiet, wet, and dry. So you don't place the block center next to the library, right? That doesn't make any sense. So you want to have areas where it's quiet, where students can like focus on things that they're doing, and then active areas can be next to each other. And then wet and dry, you just have to think about like the placement of things. Like you want the art center to be like next to a sink, so if there's like spill of paint or something, they have access to a sink very easily. You have to be careful where you put your sand and water table because of spills and things like that, and what's safe. And so or like Play-Doh, you don't want to put over the carpet because it's going to get stuck in the carpet and get all nasty. So the next slide, you'll see, you just want the environment, like I mentioned earlier, to be very welcoming for students. It's their first time at school for many of them, and so you want them to come to an environment that they want to be at every day and that they feel welcome. Many teachers will do like a family tree or like a bulletin board with that's what I did with family pictures, so students could go and, okay, my mom and dad are coming home soon, and feel like they're a part of the classroom. We had mentioned earlier about developmentally appropriate practice, and how taking into account students' culture and language is so important. And so on this next slide, you'll see multicultural and diversity books, and these aren't like the perfect examples or just what you should use, but just a couple of examples where you want to make sure that the students in your classroom are represented in books, in the baby dolls that you have, in the posters that you bring around the classroom, so that they know that they're appreciated and valued, and they see their identity represented throughout the classroom and who they are. And then next we'll see in pre-K, it's not like this is science time, this is 30 minutes of social studies, an hour and a half of language arts. It's not really done like that. And so you'll have whole group time, you'll have small group time, and then you'll have centers time, where students will go around and learn things through the unit, but at different spaces, and so we call these centers. So the first slide is an example. The first couple slides are examples of what science centers could look like. So you might have like actual items in there, magnifying glasses, puzzles. There's like a puzzle of like a flower where they have to put the pieces together of a flower, a stem, a root, and the leaves. There's books. There's actual things that students can look at, words. So and then in the next slide, there's like measuring things. There's parts of a scientist. There are student observation pages that they are making observations. There's, I think, sorting like smooth and hard objects. Just different pieces that you might see in a science center. And then the next one's another example of a science center, of an experiment that was going on where students could go make observations or science books. You'll see all of that. Then the next example is of a math center. So there's lots of manipulatives typically in a math center, because students can use those to practice rational counting. They can use them to do patterns. They can use them for servation. They can use them for sorting. So there's lots of different things that can be done with those. And you'll see, like, in these examples, like some of them are really like hardcore, like, hey, it goes along with the theme, but then some of the things like don't necessarily go along with the theme, but they're just like content skills that are being practiced in that center, and that's okay too. Not every single thing that goes in that center has to go along with the theme. And these are centers like that I would say are like, set up maybe midway through the first semester or something like that, because in the first part of the first semester, you don't want to just like day one, like have all this crazy stuff out for kids, right? Because you want to make sure that routines are established, rules are established in those first few weeks, where it's just like a few materials, and then slowly but surely, you know, other things get introduced. In the next page, there's an example of an art center. You have to click on the link, but you'll be able to see there. In some classrooms, teachers separate, like, and they'll have an easel center, an art center with art materials, and then a Play-Doh center. Some have to just kind of have to put it all together into one. It really just depends on the size of your classroom and what you have available to you. In the next slide, you'll see examples of dramatic play centers. So the first one is of like, I'm assuming like either a pet store center or a vet. And then the next one is a link that you'll click to see an example of a bakery center. And then the next one is an example of a home center. And so some teachers will have two separate pretend and learn or dramatic play centers, where one is the home center and then the other one is set up as something else that was related to the theme. Or like in my classroom, I didn't have that amount of space, and so sometimes it was the home center, sometimes it was just pretend and learn dramatic play and it related to the theme. There's always a blocks construction center, so the next few pages you'll see examples of those, and there's a whole chapter on blocks and woodworking that you'll go through that explains some of those different materials that you'll have in there. Then next you'll see an example, a few examples of some things that could go into a library center. You always want to make sure that center is encouraging children to go in there by having like reading buddies or things where students could retell the stories, or like in the wintertime, we would put like a big pool in ours, like one of the like inflatable kids pools, and we put the white packaging popcorn stuff and like let kids sit in there with like gloves and scarves and stuff and like read in the snow. So anything you can do to encourage them to go there is great. But you also want to have, and you'll see in the examples that I've got in here, you want to have writing materials and books at every center, so that if kids, because in pre-K we have free choice centers, you don't like tell them you're going here. Doesn't really work that way. And so if they never end up going there, they still have access to books, they still have access to writing materials. So the next couple slides, you'll see a link and then just a picture example of writing centers. Then the next page is a link to a Play-Doh center. Like I said, sometimes it's separated out, sometimes it's in conjunction with the art center. The next page has a link to a sensory center, or sometimes like called the like water sand table, or a fine motor center, where students can practice sensory skills but also fine motor development skills. Then the next slide is the ABC Literacy Center. So a lot of skills get practiced here: alphabet knowledge, phonological and phonemic awareness. And so I've got links to different examples where you can see like games and things that would go in here. So there's like stuff that's just focused on the alphabet, but then there's stuff that's focused on rhyming and beginning sounds and all of those key aspects to phonological and phonemic awareness that kids need to be able to have a space to practice those skills independently as well. And then the last slide is about managing the environment with appropriate guidance. So like for young children, like the discipline plan has to be very simple. Like, you know, you want to have like maybe a max of like 5 key like